Hi boys and girls. So last time I was reviewing the Chinese version of Nescafe, as you can read there. First of all, I feel like I need to apologize to any folks who may have clicked on the video because they saw the image of this very lovely lady sipping on the coffee. I'll hold that closer. Yeah, so I used that as the the title picture because, as you can see, it's on the box. Now, I may have unintentionally misled some people into thinking that they were actually going to view that lady tasting the coffee. So I'm kind of opposed to clickbait in general. So if that is you and I misled you, I apologize for that. On a similar note, so I broke an unwritten rule, and I gave the Nescafe 5 thumbs. Yeah, that's right, 5 thumbs, which is pretty unrealistic. That would be like saying that this is the best coffee in the world. Now I realize, upon retrospect, that I may have been influenced a little by my nostalgia for this coffee and everything it represents for me. So that may not have been a very honest, accurate score. So I think I need to go back and sort of recalibrate my coffee taste buds and have another cup of regular another one of my other favorite instant coffees. I think Cafe Listo would be the good one, because that's the one which I have said previously is my favorite. So I'm gonna have a cup of that just to like refresh my my palate, and then I'm gonna see if my 5 thumb review really holds up to scrutiny. Okay, I'm gonna do the usual. Gonna make that cup of coffee, and I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. Skipping the whole making it part. You know how coffee's made by now. So here is Cafe Listo. Again, just resetting my palate. Ooh, yeah, it's nice and hot. Okay, a little too hot. I can't really taste it. So, what did I say? I feel like my subjective experience of the Nescafe may have been skewed by my nostalgia that I feel for the coffee and my personal experiences with it, the role it played in my life, and good memories that I have with it, you know? And this is something that can happen in all sorts of areas of life. For instance, in the movie franchise and I suppose book franchise of Star Wars, you got a lot of people feel very strongly, and they have a lot of love for the old movies, the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. We grew up with these movies. They played a formative role in how we developed as people and how we view the world, you know. So these hold a very special place in our hearts, and they're beloved to us. So, you know, when new installments come out, such as Force Awakens and Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, Solo, Rogue One, you know, there's huge expectations that fans have from these movies. You know, because we're not just, this isn't just another old random movie coming out. You know, it's deeply personal, and you know, when those movies stink, it can really upset people. But it's also the nostalgia that we have for the old movies can really influence the way we subjectively experience these movies. Like, because we come into it with all these expectations, you know, and if they're not met, or if they're just completely subverted, it can, it can make for a very, a different experience than if it's a brand new movie that you don't have any initial feelings about, So, I think for me, I can only speak from my personal experience. Particularly the Rise of Skywalker, although I did, well, okay, in the theater I enjoyed it a little bit, but to be honest, I knew coming into it that it was going to be a lousy movie. Just from hearing about the production and stuff, I did not have my hopes set very high. And so I had kind of steeled myself for a bad, disappointing movie. And it was pretty much what I expected. It was entertaining in a kind of shallow way with, the fun adventure scenes and whatnot, and a magical kiss at the end. Very, very Disney. I mean, what more can you say? Disney bought it and turned it just like they corrupted so many fairy tales. Turned them into these just over-the-top, happy ending stories. Which isn't how a lot of the original stories were that they adapted, Cinderella and so what was the one? I think it's Cinderella in the Grimm version, the Grimm brothers. They do some really mean stuff to the stepsisters afterwards. I mean, it's gruesome. I think they're cutting off their toes and stuff to get into the glass slippers. And, it was Snow White. Yeah, Snow White had this really horrific ending where, to punish the evil stepmother, they make her dance on hot coals or something like that till she just dies from burning her feet off. It's really gruesome. But anyway, Disney takes these and they sanitize them and make them more fun. Because our culture's a little different than the original culture that those stories came out of. So, that being said, Star Wars, disappointing ending, and I feel like I've kind of gone through a grieving process. I realize, the classics, the steps of the grieving process. They're first of all you have denial, then anger, then acceptance. Those are the ones I know. There's probably more, but I think I definitely have gone through this grieving process. Certainly there was some anger at first, but you can't live like that. You got to move on, and so I needed to find some way that I could come to terms with this reality, which is the acceptance part. But it's difficult. How do you move on? How do you let go? Speaking of Disney movies, let it go. Or like Kylo said, you gotta let the past die, man. Kill it if you have to. Okay, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about from just a personal fan perspective, now that we have this new canonical ending to the saga that started 40 odd years ago, and it's, you know, just an unacceptable ending, how do I go on with my life? So, I hinted in the last video that I actually found some solace in a TV show. Now you're probably thinking, what in the world? What is he talking about? What TV show is this? That, I mean, that has anything to do with this, as I call it, the Star Wars problem. Well, little background. So there's another franchise which is also beloved to me, and it has also undergone a similar kind of downfall, you could say. Alright, a lot of the problems very closely mirror the problems with Star Wars, and that show, well, that franchise is the Star Trek franchise. Okay, so that's, in case you're wondering, that's not, Star Trek isn't the show I was alluding to. I said there was a show that, like, gave me the answer, right? It's not Star Trek. I was thinking about the Star Trek problem, which, real briefly, I'll explain in case you don't know what happened with Star Trek. Okay, so we got Star Trek, the original series. It's a brilliant show. If you don't like it, there's something wrong with you. Then we got Star Trek Next Generation. Okay, that's what I grew up on. So that's near and dear to my heart. If I have to say what's my favorite Star Trek series, it's going to be Next Generation. Because that's the one I grew up with, you know? Judging, I mean, if you're going to be, like, judging it from an artistic perspective, maybe the original series was better in some respects. But I think they're equally good. Different characters, different generation. Anyway, after Next Generation, we had Deep Space Nine, which actually overlapped a little bit. Very close continuity there. We had Worf and O'Brien were actually carryover characters, you know. Great. Deep Space Nine was cool too. I liked that. It sort of took a different direction. It started to go into the space opera kind of direction with the ongoing saga of you know, the Bajorans and their conflict with the Cardassians and that whole crazy thing with the orbs, and it got very religious for a while, which was pretty weird when you think the original. One of the constant themes in the original series was like totally a reflection of Gene Roddenberry's own philosophy. It was just kind of anti-religious. That's a whole other topic. But anyway, Deep Space Nine, it was still good. It still had that like soul of Star Trek that was you know, very satisfying. And after that, we got Enterprise. Now, I got nothing against Enterprise. I just never got into it. I've tried watching it, and it just doesn't grab me. It's like, but I don't feel like it's a bad show. I know most Star Trek fans like it. They like it a little better than Deep Space Nine, in fact. Oh, I forgot Voyager, I'm sorry. Voyager was produced by a different studio. That was, you had Paramount was in charge of all the originals, and then UPN took over and produced Voyager. But I liked Voyager too. Voyager was great, I think, compared. No, it was also like Deep Space Nine, very saga based, with the you know, whatever. Anyway, Star Trek, it was cool, and we had several series that were true enough to the original show that it didn't feel like there was any betrayal. Fine. We had great movies coming out too. We had I like all the Star Trek Next Generation movies. Then one day the movies just stopped. I didn't think about it. Just like they slowed down. I don't know. You had this Nemesis. Might have been like the last Next Generation one. Yeah, it started to take on like a little different tone, but it was cool. It was cool. All right. Okay, but here's where the train got derailed, in my opinion. Star Trek the reboot. It's not called that. It's just called Star Trek. No subtitle. Star Trek. J.J. Abrams. What was it 2006 or something? I don't remember. I associated it around the same times like Battlestar Galactica and like the end of Lost and stuff. Okay, because it was definitely after the end of Lost, right? That was 2009, 2010. Did it overlap with that a little bit? Okay, I'm saying that because J.J. Abrams did Lost and then he did Star Trek. You know, it's like, okay, well, I loved Lost, so I was really pretty stoked about this Star Trek. And to be honest, I loved it in the theater. It was great. I thought, like, man, J.J. Abrams, he's got it, man. He understands Star Trek. There's so much I love about that movie. I can't do a full review, or this will turn it into the world's longest coffee review, which it already sort of is. The acting was great. I liked the story. It was cool. Just one little problem, and it didn't bother me so much at first. It was just kind of like a little nagging thing, like that's a little weird. Okay, and the thing was, it was this whole split off universe thing. If you don't remember the story, so there's like a explosion and spoiler alert. The Romulan planet blew up or something, and Spock was like, "Oh no, this is gonna sour relations between the Romulans, and this is bad. It's so bad. We gotta, he's like an ambassador, and he's trying to repair relations with Vulcan and Romulus, and this is just bad news." So he just goes back in time, as they do in Star Trek. They've seriously come up with like 10 different ways of traveling back in time in Star Trek. Usually by accident, like they don't mean to. It just happens by accident, like whoops, we're in 1984 for some reason. Anyway, so this is maybe one of the first times where they do it on purpose. But so Spock goes back in time, but in doing so, he starts a whole different branch of the timeline. Okay, so this, if you know anything about time travel in fiction, there's sort of like different schools of thought about how it would work, and then some of it's based on science, and some of it's just purely fantasy. Like Back to the Future is just fun fantasy. There's nothing realistic about it at all when you think about it. If you can accept time travel as a premise in the first place. Okay. Now, all of the times we've had time travel in Star Trek, there's always been like an assumption, it seems to me, that there's one correct timeline. Therefore, if you're going back in time, you gotta be super careful. You don't change anything. Like somehow little changes wouldn't have a butterfly effect and completely change the outcome of the future. If you just lay low, don't do anything drastic, you don't run into your double or anything like that, don't cause any paradoxes, you're fine, the timeline will naturally just find its course again. It's kind of like, for storytelling purposes it works. But that seemed to be the rule in Star Trek. There's anything other than like the one timeline is like an aberration and needs to be corrected. So that sort of seemed like an almost like a fundamental like basis of the Star Trek universe. Okay. So Spock going back in time and creating a different timeline, that's fine for storytelling, and I get why J.J. Abrams would want to do that, because he wants to tell more Star Trek stories. He's a fan. He's a fanboy and wants to tell stories with his favorite characters. Of course, all the original actors are too old. You can't just you can't get Leonard Nimoy and Bill Shatner to come back and play themselves as their young selves. It's out of the question. So you gotta have new actors. So how are you supposed to tell new stories in this world? And here's the thing: if you're concerned about continuity, it's a problem. And I guess for some reason he felt like, well, continuity is so important with the original series in a technical sense, like a time chronology in that universe. We have to explain why things are different. Why is Captain Pike not a weird cripple? It's, okay. How were we able to just have like a totally different history of Star Trek? Oh, it's a split-off universe because Spock went back in time and changed it. Okay, see, that's like, okay. I guess technically you could do that. And so that's the little thing that was like bothering me. I enjoyed the movie. It was like, this doesn't feel right. Okay. Moving forward, Star Trek Into Darkness. Again, I enjoyed the movie. I liked the fun, silly stuff like the Khan Kirk reversal, where this time it's, Kirk giving up his life, and it's Spock raising his fist and yelling, Khan! I enjoyed that. Some people hated that. They called that intertextuality and felt like it undermined the whole tone of Star Trek. I didn't feel that was the case. To me, I thought this was more in line with J.J. Abrams' his belief in fate, which is a big theme in all of his stuff. I see that there's go back to Star Trek, his reboot. So the history timeline gets changed, but yet somehow every crew member of the original Star Trek that we know, through totally different paths, ends up together somehow on the deck of the Enterprise, and Kirk ends up captain somehow. How did that happen? Just coincidence? Or is there some, fate element to it? So, it seems to me it's like, oh, this is hinting at some, a deeper kind of force at work here. Did I say force? I guess I did. Anyway, forces, that's Star Wars. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere here. This is something that doesn't belong in Star Trek, does it? And the time, so you take that together with the time travel thing, the split-off universe. This is undermining, at a fundamental level, what Star Trek is. And so, by the time it got to the second movie, although I enjoyed it kind of on a superficial level, this little nagging problem grew into a mountain, and it completely undercut my ability to enjoy it as a Star Trek movie. And I realized, Star Trek is ruined. This is it. This movie was it was shallow. It had cool special effects and exciting music, but the soul was somehow taken out of it. my beloved Star Trek has been murdered. So, I went through the grieving process, I guess. Although, in a weird way, it was kind of like retrospect. That I was looking back and I realized, yeah, there's no more Star Trek movies coming out. Oh, right. I skipped something again. I must not be drinking enough coffee. My mind's working slow. Okay. Star Trek Discovery. This was when I knew Star Trek was over. I watched one episode of that show, and I just immediately saw that this is not Star Trek. Its whole essence is just contrary to the spirit of Star Trek. I don't want to get into it right now because, again, this will turn into like just a way too long a thing, but the visuals were cool, the costumes, fine, music, great. All the technical aspects that you could judge a show on were good. But it wasn't Star Trek. And I wasn't that upset because I don't think I expected there to be more Star Trek. And I was already kind of weaned off of it a little bit by the J.J. Abrams movie. Like, I sort of already come to feel that, like, this universe has somehow been ruined. Like, they're just, Star Trek's over. There can't be any more Star Trek. So that's background. That's the Star Trek problem. And I was bringing this up as a parallel to the Star Wars problem. Because the problem was very similar, okay? Now, out of this whole Star Trek mess came something very surprising. And the reason I'm not super upset about the death of Star Trek is because a show came along which showed me the light. And that show is The Orville. Yes, that's right, The Orville. Comedy, satire. If you were to just look at it at first glance, it looks like it's making fun of Star Trek. Specifically like the Next Generation kind of era. Which was that was the one that's beloved to me, so I shouldn't be able to enjoy this, right? How dare you make fun of Star Trek, Next Generation? But actually, in some crazy way, watching the show, I discovered that this show, which was a parody of Star Trek, was more Star Trek than the new Star Trek series. Discovery, Picard. Isn't there another one? Oh, Lower Decks. I haven't watched either of those. I haven't watched Picard or Lower Decks, and frankly, I don't really even want to. I don't need to, because I already know it's not Star Trek. And I don't care. It's fine, because I discovered that even though Star Trek has been killed, it's able to live on in a weird kind of like reincarnation way in this other show, The Orville. And I'm not alone in this. A lot of other Star Trek fans just feel like this show is the authentic Star Trek. It's weird. It defies logic because it's a comedy, and yet it just somehow it's more true to the original Star Trek, even like the original 60s Star Trek. It goes back to the essence of like the episodic format of dealing with like ethical dilemmas and stuff, sort of like Twilight Zone or Outer Limits, but in space, right? That's the real essence of science fiction. So yeah, this show came along and showed me that, like, even though a beloved show can be ruined, its spirit can live on and be reborn in new shows, new series. Okay, so that, to me, is a great solace for the Star Wars problem. I have to come to the acceptance part of the process here and realize that Star Wars is dead. It's ruined. You know, this is no longer something that it's out of my control. I can't change it. So all I can do is have the serenity to accept the situation, because I can't change it. All right, but that doesn't mean that the spirit of Star Wars can't live on. So maybe we'll have a new show pop up, or a new movie that is more truly Star Wars than these last Star Wars movies. I don't know. Or maybe I just have to like kind of write off these last movies as legend, kind of like a little psychological trick in my mind. And I'm already sort of doing that. I'm sort of already thinking of these movies as like they're not real. They're not real canon. Okay, so supposedly Disney has the power to declare it canon, but like who are they? It's just there's a financial transaction between George Lucas and Disney. Like that, does that give them the power to declare what is true in the Star Wars universe? Or does not George Lucas still maintain that sole authority? These are philosophical questions, really. So, I don't know. But on a personal level, I can overcome this grieving process here by recognizing that although they can attack the outer aspects of Star Wars, they can legally, in a copyright sense, own the images and trademarked names and stuff and phrases like lightsaber. Nobody else can use that term. I don't know if you've ever seen like these knockoff toys at the toy store. Like they just call them space swords. I think that's hilarious because that's totally like calling them a laser sword, like Luke did in Last Jedi. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Laser swords. Okay, so Disney owns these trademarks, but so what? They can have all that stuff. The soul of Star Wars is something they can never buy. It's not for sale. It belongs to us, to the fans. It belongs to everybody for whom these stories are precious. I think it was Thoreau who said, nature and books belong to the eyes that see them. Something like that. I don't know. Who's Thoreau? What makes him an authority on this? He's not. But it's an interesting idea. Alright, so there it is. Star Wars is dead. And that's okay. Because its soul lives on. Right here. Alright, so that's part 2. What did I say? This is going to be a trilogy. So, part 3. Part 3 is going to be A New Hope. Alright? The story's not over. Alright? All this that I just said, this was all just personal. This is me dealing with this problem on a personal level, coming into terms with it. That does not preclude the possibility that there is something that can be done in the franchise universe to maybe fix the situation. So that's going to be the topic for part 3, chapter 3, if you will. A New Hope for Star Wars. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.